So the idea with connecting to ArcGIS REST services is that you, instead of finding a data portal online and then downloading a shapefile and then managing it locally, you can basically connect directly to most cities or parishes or institutions data stores. Um, and it almost feels like hacking. It's kind of exciting, but it really expands the amount of connectivity, I think, between different resources. What is really good about this is that, you know, of course, Esri is ubiquitous, and so like everyone kind of has this same server installation at their city or their government, or like Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. So out there is a very standard set of software that exposes its resources, and so we can connect straight to that. And I just found this really old school looking little web page that has I just put it in the chat, but it's just a definition of what REST is. It stands for Representational State Transfer, and it's basically a protocol that turns database resources into URLs, so it's very easy to access them. And so again, if a city installs ArcGIS Server and then puts all of their transportation data in it and puts all of their zoning districts in it, they can, that software is set up for them to very easily publish that into a REST service, which can be consumed by any different type of software. And so QGIS has a really easy way to incorporate this. And so that's kind of where we thought we'd make the connection here. I think that's enough of just like a really basic thing. Does that sound good? John, do you want to add anything to that? Because we'll do more later also. But did I say anything I was totally wrong?
No, I think everything's right. And what you said about the hacking, I like that too, because I'm definitely not a hacker. But depending on, you know, if you want, I can explain how those services get created and published. But yeah, if depending on how open the services are, you can actually dig into creating URL queries essentially through an interface where you can just also customize that endpoint almost for yourself, where again, you just have a URL, you can pass it along to whatever. And yeah, sometimes you can just also manipulate the URL and get the stuff that it's available, but it's not like, it's hidden, but it's still available without passwords or anything like that. So yeah, that was a good explanation.
Yeah, and the one other thing, we may get to the more of the details later, for sure. But one thing to mention is that, and we'll probably see this, I guess, also. But if you go to like City of or East Baton Rouge Parish, of course, you go to their GIS site. Typically, you'll see some sort of gallery with a lot of like web apps, you know, trash pickup days, zoning districts, lots of different interactive web maps. Those are basically all populated by the data in their ArcGIS server. And so you can also think of those gallery maps. You can think of the layers in them as ingredients that you can put in your own local software through basically what we're going to be showing. So, so that's kind of, yeah. I think that's plenty. And now, Tanvi, do you want to just? Oh, I probably got to allow it, but share your screen and
Yeah.
take it away.
Yeah, so I'm gonna approach this just by how I stumbled upon REST services. I had no idea what it was. Somebody told me to connect to one, and I didn't even know how. So this was a great find. And John, maybe later on, if you want to show like how you would connect to one through ArcGIS, we're just going to do QGIS, just because that's what I have. But it should be pretty similar. So I'll share my screen. Can y'all see this? Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'll just start where Adam left off. Basically, I was looking at this data set, and I had actually gotten, this is from Trust for Public Land, it's the urban heat island effect, and I had contacted them. They would not give me the original data, and then I put it out on the Slack group, asking if anybody could help me, and they said, yeah, you can get this directly to your GIS program. And so basically what we're looking at is the ArcGIS interface, user interface. But like Adam said, if you go to like an open data portal, if you click on this API area, you'll see this URL, and it has REST service inside. And that's basically all you're looking for, is that link. And so I couldn't find it here. So the person told me, go to content and then click these 3 dots and then go to description. And then here, voila, we have exactly what I need. So basically, I just needed to copy this URL. But like John was saying earlier, there's ways to kind of hack the data that's stored. I don't know that this will work for this REST service, but if you go back a couple of folders in the directory, you'll see a bunch of other layers that are available. So what you could do is actually collect this URL, and I'll show you all how to put that into queue. But you want to just look for this end URL. Basically, that's the most simple. So I'm going to copy that, and you can see that there's many different layers here. And then I have QGIS open, and so probably you might not have done this before, but if you go in your browser panel, down here you have 2 layers. One is called ArcGIS Map Service, and then the other one is ArcGIS Feature Service. So basically the feature service is really for the vector data, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is my understanding. But that's for your vector data, and then the map service is more for your raster data. I'm seeing a nod, so okay, good. So all you want to do is you can right click on there, we're going to start with the feature service, right click on there and do new connection. And then I'll just name this Trust for Public Land, and then paste the URL. And there you go. And now, if this works properly, you have access to all the layers. So voila. So let's see, for example, municipalities. I haven't opened this, so I don't know what it's going to look like. Yep, and you'll see, I probably shouldn't have done this one. It's going to be huge. Yeah, looks like the United States. But basically now you can, with the vector data, you can work with it like you would your shape files, your KMLs, whatever. You can categorize it with your, your attributes and whatnot. So that's really fantastic. And the best part is it's not downloaded onto your computer. So you're saving a ton of space. And if they update the data, it's already updated in your connection. So there are a number of places. I mean, truthfully, I think all I did was Google, let's say, does anybody have a city? We'll just make this kind of interactive. Any city you want.
Mill Valley.
Okay. Maybe a little bigger. Let's try San Francisco. Because I'm not sure if they have a data portal, but let's see. We'll put REST services. And then, I mean, this kind of looks like it. Yeah. So we'll just go back a link. I guess. I don't really know what this one is. Maybe this is kind of a random one. Let's see. So, I mean, you know, use your words, open data. So you might just have to kind of look around for what you need, but I imagine it shouldn't be too difficult. Of course, I'm kind of confused here, but oh, is that the API docs, Adam?
Not sure. I think going, well, interesting here. I think going back to where you were before, with the starting with that 311 service.
The 311.
So going back up to just the San Francisco.
Oh yeah, there you go. Let's see. Maybe I went too far back. Well, it's just got 311.
It says sample server 3.arcgisonline.com. So I feel like that might not be like
Yeah, the actual
San
one.
Francisco service, but you could just put it in to test.
Yeah. So, but you guys get the idea, basically, that those, you know, if you're looking for something, you could try it this way and see what you can get. Yeah, so we only have one layer here, but anyways, so there is, oops, I turned off the rendering. So that's, I mean, that's the gist of it. There's really nothing much to it. The one thing I do want to talk about once this stops loading is the map service with raster layers, because a lot of places that I was working with, the way that they've uploaded their raster is that they've turned it into an image, and that is not actual data that you can work with in QGIS. So like if you were trying to run contours off of it or something, you wouldn't be able to do that because there's no geographic data. Okay, so this isn't working, but we'll just leave this.
Yeah, maybe because that was a simple one. It wasn't.
Yeah,
really
that was the best one. So
reliable.
I'm gonna turn this one off, and then I'll just load one of the, let's do New Orleans tree can, well, oh, okay, here's a good one. New Orleans stormwater modeling. So I'm just gonna load all layers, and okay. So it looks like it's a regular raster, but unfortunately, if I go to try to change anything styling wise, I can't, just because of what I told you. It's loaded as an image. So like even if I zoom in here, all I'm gonna get when I click for more information is like the pixel value. It's not actually I don't think it's, oh, maybe.
Well, I think it's the real value. Yeah, I can say a little more about the difference between the map server layers and feature server layers, because it actually comes down not specifically to the type of data that's being served, but actually to the way that it's being published through the ArcGIS REST server, or through the ArcGIS server through the REST API. And the feature server is when a layer is published in a way that allows you to get all, like specifically vector data, but it allows you to get all the attributes, and that's how you're able to style. You can export it to a shapefile locally and do all kinds of manipulation on it, that kind of thing. So a feature server, feature services give you basically full access to the data in every way that you could want. Besides, of course, write access, you can't change it, presuming they have all their security set up right. But you know, you won't be able to change it, but you'll be able to download it or even restyle and run geoprocessing on it, just with the direct connection. But a map server it's a service that, instead of passing all of the vector information, like an attribute table, it passes a image representation of the layer. And so it actually can be either raster data that is distributed through the map server protocol, or vector data that's distributed. But if you get vector data through the map server service, it'll similarly not allow you to change any attributes, any styling. It'll be only published as a specific static style. So so that's one of the things that when we were testing stuff out with this earlier, is that you can add REST server in QGIS. You can add these ArcGIS REST URLs as either map services or as feature services. And if you add it as a feature service and the layer is published as a feature service, then you get this full vector data access. But if you add it as a map service and it's published as a map service, then you get the kind of flat representation of the layer, and not the full attributes.
Hey, Adam,
yeah, go ahead.
I'll jump in. So
yeah.
I've always been frustrated that when I encounter another organization's Arc server setup, Esri has defaults when you go to publish a service, and a lot of people just accept those defaults. Those don't just include security settings and what level of access there is to different users on that server, but it also includes, say, the speed or the availability of the service itself on the server. So things aren't always configured right. If you have a lot of data that you're trying to serve out, you need to make sure you don't just have high availability, but the ability for a lot of people to hit those data. Map services are always a default, and you can't not publish a map service. And I'm not an expert on those, but I've always considered them. Map service is just a read-only thing, and it's static in terms of you can't change it on the client side. It's not static in terms of if somebody updates data on the server side, on a data server, those will refresh on the client side. And a feature service, that's really what gives you access to, if you're going to go out and use Collector for ArcGIS, or you're going to edit data in a web or even a desktop environment, when you're consuming those services, that's where you can actually go and allow end users to manipulate, create data on a feature service through that REST endpoint.
Yeah,
I mean that's basically it, apart from a few other things that allow you to symbolize it differently. And then in ArcGIS online side, there have for years been issues with just being able to do cartographic things like order your layers differently in the map, whether you're running a map or a feature service. I'll leave that at that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say, Adam, thanks for that explanation, because actually, until I just tried this, finding the info on the layer, I thought it didn't actually have the data. So I learned something new, and that makes sense by how you explained it. But I did want to say just a couple more things. Even though you can't really style this layer, you can kind of hack it a little bit. You can use colorize if you really don't like the color table, but you have to kind of fiddle with the strength. It's not perfect, but if you really hate the colors, that's a way to do it. And and then just one more thing on the map layout. If you have this layer and then you go to add your legend, it's gonna do this funky thing if the way that they've set it up on their end is funky. So I've had to just manually make squares, use my polygon here and put the text. And it's not going to read the colors with the colorize. So just know that. So you might just have to, do your rectangle and then sample the color.
Nice.
So yeah, and that's pretty much all I wanted to show you guys, other than our handy dandy resources folder, so our spreadsheet. I've got a couple of REST services listed here, but as y'all run across any, please put them in here. There's a lot of interesting ones that you may not know about, or somebody might not know about and might find helpful. So that's all I have.
Yeah, great. Thanks for especially the layout point. So those legends are published by the service itself. So you're kind of at the mercy, like John was kind of getting at, you're kind of at the mercy of how it's been set up. I don't know that the legend could be different. I'm not really sure how that all gets set up, but it's a really good point that I've definitely come across services that looked like they would work, but then there can be other sort of even more hidden problems, like I don't know the details of it, but coordinate reference system issues can cause them, depending on how it's been published, it may not work out. And maybe it would work in ArcMap and it wouldn't work in QGIS. There may be some extra glue that fits those two pieces of software together. I'm not 100% sure, but just to point out that, yeah, there is a lot of like kind of editorial choices that the city, or the state or whoever is publishing these services make. And so you're definitely limited in some ways, because like you're seeing with the legend here, it's a total mess and it doesn't make sense. And part of me thinks that there are, I don't know, maybe 5 different tiled images published as a single layer. So you get 5 different legend, which doesn't make any sense graphically, but that may be what's going on in this specific case. So I wanted to show I got another example of the map server versus feature server. And I think you all can see this, right? So like John mentioned, and I appreciate this because I didn't know this, but by default, everything's published as a map service, which means by default, it's published in like a read-only flat graphic way. And then there's some extra, configuration that they have to do to make sure that it's published as a feature server as well. So the quirk that we've found in consuming those services with QGIS is that it's kind of up to you to figure out which is which. So like Tanvi mentioned, there's these 2 different, they're kind of like folders for existing connections that you've created to databases out there. And so you can think of it as one folder makes a connection for map services and the other makes a connection for feature services. So what I'm finding to be helpful, or at least what I've been doing so far, is basically to make the same connection in both of them. And then some layers will work in some and some will work in the other. Or in some cases, the same layer will work in both, but you'll be able to see the difference in characteristics between the 2 different types of services. So for example, this is the East Baton Rouge GIS server, which is really great. They have a ton of data in there. I'm sure John knows some of these people who set this up, but they've got a lot of parish-wide information. And so this is the URL. And so what I've done is add it both to the feature service connection set and then also to the map service connection set. And what I just did now was test out adding the same layer through both different protocols. So I added this dirty or unfenced swimming pool 311 blight request. So looks like there's a lot of 311 requests because of that. And so, let me remove this. Okay, so when I add it, well, I'll show. May as well just show. So from here, just drop it in. And so the first thing to notice right away is that it shows up here as a raster. This little tiled, symbol means that this is a raster layer. And you can see all of the squares, zoom into them, they redraw, they rescale, all of that. And if we style it, we see all of these very generic raster options like Tanvi was seeing. Like she was saying, you could colorize. So we're able to change some of the colors kind of, but really what we're seeing is like a raster representation of vector data. And you do have the ability typically to make an information request to the server. So identify, like I just did a little identify thing on it. And that does give you the attribute information. That runs from like a separate little request that just went to the server and pulled this information back. So it's accessible, some of this info, but it's not like we have an attribute table that allows us to, categorize, download as an actual shapefile, for example. The map service doesn't give that. But if we add the same layer through the feature service, we'll see, again, it's published with the same symbology by default. But you can already tell it's a little different here because it's got the little symbol, not the raster symbol. And we can open the attribute table and get all of the information. So we can try something like, we can do any sort of style things we could do with a vector like label. So we could label by address, for example. So all that to say, when exploring these data sets, the labels are there. When exploring these data sets, and if you find a new city's GIS REST, endpoint, it may be worth just adding it in both ways here, and testing out whichever you want. So if we try to add something that hasn't been published as a feature service from this feature service connection, I think it just gets an error.
Hey, so Adam, I've got a REST service in QGIS, and I am it's only under feature service, but both the map services and the feature services show up underneath that ArcGIS feature service folder. Also, don't move your mouse. See where you're hovering and you were wondering what the difference was. And the URL, it says map server if it's a map service, and feature server if it's a feature service. But and as far as the attribute table goes, whatever is in the feature service attribute wise whatever's in a table, all of those same things should be in the map service, because they're in the same, they're the same service, and they're coming from the same map used to publish them. So whatever table settings they had, whatever fields they set to be viewable, those should both be in both services.
Yeah, that makes sense. But what I found also is that, like you say, it does say map server. That's the URL that's being given here. But I did just add this, and I think we're going to get it as a full feature service. Uh-oh, there we go. See, I think there's just a little bit of sloppiness in terms of what services are, what it looks like when these feature services come into QGIS. So yeah.
I think EBR publishes everything as map services for the most part. I don't know why Warren does that, but that may be why all of those are map services. Not sure. We can always find out him about it.
Well, it's more data for us, so it's nice.
Yeah, I would just echo, like, if it doesn't work in one, try it in the other, and exactly. You don't have to know all the ins and outs of it. You can just test it and see if it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the only other thing I wanted to show was a little bit more just about how to find these services, because it's definitely something that took me a while to get a little bit used to, I guess, or well, I would just start by saying that first of all, the zoom controls get in the way of everything, which is so difficult. Let me go back here and get the so this, well, that's so this is kind of the goldmine view, if you will. This is like the back end of the ArcGIS server, or not back end, but it's like the data access endpoint for the REST services. I guess it all says it right there. But this is like the folder where you can see everything you're able to access in their whole server. And this looks the same at every installation. So the URL will change and the content, of course, will change. But this interface and certain details of it will change depending, like John was saying, on how they've published and configured things. But when it comes down to it, this interface is the very common, or it's the standard, the default.
I'll also add, so you see that main URL portion, maps.brla.gov. If you suspect that an organization has an ARC server, just add GIS/REST/services to the end of it and see what comes up. Sometimes you can change, organizations will change that GIS part, but it's a sneaky way to see if they have one that maybe they don't have.
Yeah.
And if you know somebody in that city, like planning or whatever, ask them, do you have REST services? And just using that phrase will get you a lot. So if you're not able to hack it.
Yeah, so I was thinking we could just go to one, Tanvi was searching with REST, which I actually makes a lot of sense. So we'll try this because there's another discovery method that I wanted to show. That's New York, Austin, Texas. See, look, so already you can see here this austintexas.gov/GIS/REST. And then what popped up here is specifically a layer about zoning, but I don't even, let's not, we won't even go to that page. We can just type it in here. We'll do it like this, just to, so we say Austin Rest. Put it over here so I can see it. What was it? We'll just see what happens. So it adds it right away, and then opening it didn't work. Okay, wait. Let's try the shared. Okay, so we had to change it to shared. That's what's in this page, or that's what's here, rest/shared. So getting that URL might be a little tricky sometimes, I suppose. This basically means they've done a little bit more organizing and like configuring. But yeah, so all of a sudden we now can see all of the data on their server and access it. Let's do something that's probably not a huge council districts fill. Okay, so the transformation. Okay, so these are the Austin council districts, for example. And because we added it through this REST services, wizard or whatever, or panel, we've added it as a feature service. So it's trying to pull these layers in as a feature service, which means that because it did work and we are viewing it, it should be a full vector data set now that we can, do whatever we want with. The other way that sometimes I find these things is by, like I mentioned earlier, typically that's obviously not the most public friendly facing interface. So organizations will use their ArcGIS online installation to like create a gallery of web apps. And here is for East Baton Rouge Parish. As you can see, this is just all kinds of different web apps and maps. And what you can do and so every city is going to have something like this, right? And once you get into a interface like this, one way, what we're doing is we're pulling this layer into QGIS through their REST services. So one way you can track down where this data is coming from to get onto their map is by using the developer tools. Actually, I don't even know if that'll work. If you hit F12 on any browser, it'll pop up. And so this is like all web development stuff, but when you refresh the page, in this network tab, it basically it shows you all of the requests that are being made to populate the web page. So with a little bit of trial and error, this can be another way to find that URL, which is like the maps.ebr right here.
Adam, so I've used that way before and it's excellent, but since those services, those layers are publicly available, there is a URL and they probably don't have to use a token or something to make it publicly available. But any of us can go to ArcGIS Online without an account, I think without an account, and you can actually search for feature layers. And those aren't layers that are hosted on ArcGIS Online, but what you may commonly do is you will take your REST endpoint and then you will add that as layer to ArcGIS Online. And then you can actually search all of ArcGIS Online. So yeah, if you go there, you just type in like EBRGIS, that will take you to that endpoint on AGO. And then you can actually kind of track backwards to get the REST service from that.
Okay, cool.
Can you actually try that logged out? Do you have to You have to log in to do this?
I can't remember. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. I mean, AGO is, I mean, Esri's always trying to sell the crack to us to make us purchase it all the time. Some of it free.
Because I've never created the ArcGIS online account. Is that free? Like just the entry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's free.
Okay.
You can create a free to use account. It's limited.
Okay.
And they actually don't blast you with a bunch of spam emails.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Thanks.
You can actually do quite a lot, I think, with a free online account for sure.
That's helpful.
I mean, you can't like do a lot of analysis or anything, but like when I got married, I created a story map of downtown for out of town guests, and that was all free.
Yeah, nice. Good one. So I'm not sure that you're able to do the full search without logging in. John, were you thinking of going?
Yeah,
Can you
you
just
want?
guide me?
Yeah,
Oh,
or
yeah, you yeah,
mind
yeah,
if I share my screen then?
not at all.
All right. All right, there we go. All right, so get out of here. All right, so here's an example of what I did. I went to add, search for layers, and don't get tied up in the URL or anything like that. Just if you can make your way to ArcGIS online, you can. So I typed in EBRGIS. This is the first one that came up. Oops. And then I clicked on EBRO, whatever that is. And that pulls up these details. And then, oh shoot, I can hit metadata. This is not going the way I planned. Let me find another one.
No worries. A lot of trial and error always.
Yeah, all right. You know what?
The Trust for Public Land one. I'm curious if that'll.
Oh, you know what? Let me do that one more time. I think I got it. So I'm going to add this to my map. And then where is it? This one. So I'm going to click this drop down, and then there's these little dots. I'm going to click Show Item Details. That also this ID and ArcGIS Online things. Everything has a unique ID. So if you're looking at a web application or web map that's hosted, you can use that to search for that map and then get this details page. But you can see that. Man, I gotta hide this little screen. There's the URL for it right here. So this was uploaded as a feature layer. You can copy that. I'm just gonna paste it in there, and then boom, that'll take me to their Arc server on the backend side, where you can do pretty much whatever you want. And I'll go ahead and add. I got to jump on to another meeting, but there's a lot of stuff you can dig into on here, looking at, I don't want to call it metadata, but all of this information about this. You click on that layer, and you can see what the fields are that they have, what the field types are, and that gives you some idea of what operations you might be able to do if you want. If you're smart and you know to go in here and write and do a query that will then actually allow you to return data that you might be able to download or create a URL query. So
nice. So to go back to the beginning of that, it's like search for a layer, any layer from the organization that you want.
And it doesn't, you don't even have to know the organization. So there's a drop down where you search my content. It just goes up and up and up and up and up. And then ArcGIS Online, that's the entire universe of ArcGIS Online. And I'll type in, I don't know, the company I used to work for, Aptum. Hey, my buddy Courtney Weber. So just, you know what? Sure. But you can type in anything pretty much.
I see.
And
if you get one, basically, if you get one layer that you can follow back to its item details, then you'll get the URL for the full installation.
All right, I'm going to run off, but good to see y'all again. I hope to see y'all next week.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks, Adam.
I just want to add one last thing. With the features, you can export your data to shape files and stuff just like you would normally. I'm not going to show y'all. Y'all know how to export data. But just to let you know that that's an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be really helpful. Cool. Nice. Well, that's like, yeah, we have a few more minutes, I suppose, until 1. Are there, yeah, any other thoughts, questions?
I'm excited about it. I didn't know about that. Obviously, I didn't know about anything with QGIS, so I'm learning so much this week.
Yeah,
It was
cool.
a huge help to find this.
Yeah, it's really nice. Because it's just the breadth of information available through those services is so huge. Like the Sewage and Water Board in New Orleans, they publish their like daily work tickets, so you can see where they're working throughout the whole city on a daily basis. Just kind of weird random stuff sometimes, but you know, or like alcohol permits, you know, churches. Lots of cities have a lot of information out there, and again, we were looking at cities, but like the state departments will have it. Maybe the state itself would have some GIS department that would have an endpoint like that. And yeah, it's just good to keep in mind for data sources, you know. Yeah.
Another thing to point out is you can also publish your own feature services if you've got something you've done and want to share it. Kind of the flip side of all this.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the ArcGIS server installation, that's what like all of, you know, all these cities and departments will have that installation, and then they'll populate it with data sets. There are other ways to publish data. That's not the only one, obviously. And so there's, you know, of course, there's open source alternatives to that, but ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Server certainly has the huge market share. So I think part of what was really nice about learning this a little when I did only a couple of years, or a year ago, really, a couple of years ago, is that it's applicable to so many other, you know, it opens up so much, such a huge range. But yeah, other software that's somewhat analogous to ArcGIS Server is software called GeoServer, which I've used a lot to publish my own services, but mainly as like historic map overlays, so image overlays. There's another one called GeoNode, which is more of like ArcGIS Online. It's more analogous to that, where you upload data sets and you can edit data sets and create maps with it. In fact, Andrew, I've learned a ton about GeoNode, and I think it would be really, really good for your early Louisiana project. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, we'll see if I get the funding.
Yeah, right.
But we actually Lucas set up the feature server in the geography department.
Yeah.
Served a few layers through it, and I just looked at it. There's a whole bunch of stuff on it, all kinds of random stuff. I don't know if it's related to courses and teaches or what.
Yeah.
Would you share the link with us?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
That'd be great.
Let's see, chat, right?
I'm adding some of these things to the spreadsheet right now. So.
Well, I'll share a link for one of mine, but you can just track it back up directory to the thing. Let's see, because I have that in my clipboard right now. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just looked at it, and there's a whole bunch of all kinds of random stuff on it. I think Luke's maybe using it for teaching.
Yeah, there's like slave voyages.
Yeah, that's mine, but there's all kinds of stuff on it.
So
I mean, I use it mainly to serve features that are time enabled, so I can publish web maps with the time enabled using the ArcGIS apps.
Yeah, cool. QGIS now will read time-enabled services, and there's a lot, I haven't delved into it, but there's a really cool time capability in the latest version of QGIS, which is really cool.
There was
That's all I
a,
can say about that.
was that through this group? I watched a seminar by some Australian guy showing how that worked.
I might have posted about it, but yeah, that was probably Niall Dawson.
It was just amazing. I haven't tried it
Yeah.
myself, but what he was doing was just amazing. It looks much more capable than ARC actually.
Yeah, it looks great. In fact, that podcast, Philip, the Anita Grasser, who does all the GeoPanda stuff, I think she basically wrote what was the time-enabled plugin for QGIS, and then it's now like become a core part of the software, but she's like behind that whole thing. So kind of a superstar. Pretty cool. Yeah, Andrew, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I was going to throw a puzzle out there kind of on this topic of hacking your way into what should be publicly available data through a web server. And I guess I have to, here we go. If I can share my screen quickly.
Yeah, you should be able to.
This is the St. John the Baptist Parish data portal. And I was looking at this for a while for my thesis, because I really was trying to get my hands on this, some of this building footprint data. I ended up getting it through another source, kind of through doing some emailing. But from what I can tell, there's no way to download it through here. And I haven't been able to figure out if this is an ARC backend or some other sort of thing. But anyway, I just wanted to throw this out there if anybody's familiar with something like this and how to kind of like get some of this data, because it is, you know, there's clearly valuable information kind of embedded in these shape files in terms of, I mean, it links to the tax assessor's website for some of the parcels, so you can see, you know, assessed values and purchase histories and etc. So anyway, we don't have to dig into it right now, but if anybody wants to spend some time trying to figure out how they can hack it and get some of that info, that's cool. the website.
Did you put it in the chat?
Sure.
I actually was going to ask about that, so I'm glad you brought it up. Forgot about that.
About this data source specifically?
Yeah, because there's been like
funny.
Ascension Parish and other places I've gotten the same situation.
Yeah, it looks like this is, I guess this company is a GCT services. I think they must have had a state contract or have made some money by subcontracting out with individual parishes who don't have the kind of capacity or wherewithal to do this kind of stuff on their own. So
yeah, cool. I think you're totally right to look at the company, because sometimes that like gives all the information. You know, going to their site, they'll be like, we specialize in our own proprietary web viewer. And yeah, I think looking through that, I think the main thing would just be to start looking at the, you know, at the requests that the page makes to see if the data comes as, because there's no need for it to be pulled in dynamically from a different service, but it could all just be like a local file that's read and shown, you know, and therefore much less accessible.
I think I found it. Let's see. No, just kidding.
I definitely spent a fair amount of time digging through the source code on that at one point.
Oh, it looks like they do have a geo.
I got it. Here you go, Andrew. So that I used
Ta-da!
Adam's method of inspecting the page. Good job, guys. That was fun.
Wait,
Nice. That was easy, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. You did it.
What did you
Wow.
find? Can you share your screen?
So
Oh.
the URL is
There you go.
services.geoportalmaps.
Oh.
So
okay.
I did exactly what Adam just showed us how to do. And then I copied the link address and then took off all the stuff at the end until I got to just map server.
Yeah, they're running a proxy.
And then, yeah.
So if you take off the front half up to the question mark, that should be the REST services URL, right?
Let's see if I
oh,
copy
interesting.
this.
Services.geoportalmap. I see.
They're
Really?
essentially like masking it,
Ah,
like running it
Probably.
through Arc, but making it like they're not.
sorry, I'm gonna
Yeah,
try and see if that works.
Wow, so they actually have a ton of data sets there. Huh.
See if that actually works.
Ooh, pretty maps, Tanvi.
Oh, thanks. Let's see, St. John the Baptist. Let's
Yeah.
see if, oh, maybe. Well, I don't want to get my hopes up. Let's see, parish outline. It did work. Wow. Okay.
Cool.
Amazing.
Wow. Good question, Andrew.
I'm glad I asked it.
Okay,
Cool.
I missed the question, guys. What was the question?
Amy, this might actually help you.
Okay.
Andrew was asking about, I don't know how much you heard, but these like small parishes and counties where you have just these like geospatial data that you can't download or access, how to hack your way to getting the actual data. So like this is St. John the Baptist Parish. And so I just use Adam's method, which you do the inspect. Adam, what is the F12?
It's called developer tools more generally, and it's yeah, it's used for web development basically, because it gives you all kinds of meta information about the browser. So when you
So you can find the source that way?
Yeah.
Exactly, you can see the source of the page, but in this case, if you did you go to sources? That's probably even better, huh?
Yeah, that's what I did.
So yeah, that's a better way. That consolidates all the things. But different tabs show different information, and so that sources tab shows all of the different host domains basically that are providing content to the page you're looking at. That's a much better way than sifting through the network. Yeah,
and then you just copy the link address, put it in here, and then Andrew made a good point. Basically, so you want to take everything off after map server, and it'll bring you to this page. And then you want to just take this HTTPS here after the question mark, and you copy that, and then you make your connection there using that.
And you don't have to include those subdirectories in the connection. You can take everything off.
So I could do that. Okay.
And when you do that, I think that's going to give you access to every single data set that they're sourcing to for any contract they've had.
Wow,
so look at all those counties you have.
Yeah,
Bossier,
oh my gosh.
East Baton Rouge Parish. Awesome.
That's really great.
Right,
so that's the company stuff?
Yeah.
Nice.
Tell me where y'all started. Like, what was the original map you got this information from? What site? Some atlas? It was the Atlas Geoportal maps or what?
It was for St. John the Baptist Parish.
It was built by this company, GCT. It's a custom built portal, and my guess is that this is a company that essentially takes ArcMap web services capability and repackages it and sells it to parishes who don't have the means or knowledge or whatever to do it on their own.
Yeah,
they
a lot
also
of them
probably
the assessors. You know, usually I would search for like East Baton Rouge Parish Assessor GeoPortal, and that would bring up the one for EBR where you can find tax records and property and zoning and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is a gold mine though. Good question.
Awesome. I'm gonna.
I hope
click
I
on
can
that.
remember this, but since
Copy
you
it right now.
since we have the chat saved, I can probably remember how you got to it.
And this is recorded too. So.
I'll try to put all the
Yes,
links.
that's helpful
in
too.
the web page right up. Yeah, and one other thing to mention about this company, although I don't know it, but it is big business to actually draw these parcel sets as spatial data. So I think it's pretty common that companies will do that, and then also, you know, it'll be a contract with the parish for, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, of course, to basically digitize and create their parcel fabric, you know. So that may be also what this company does, and this is kind of their back end for where they store their info.
Mm-hmm.
They do repackage it in a very strangely worse than Esri. Well, it's not bad, but it's definitely like a custom
Why are they
front
doing
end.
that? Why don't they use their own server, like GeoServer, to publish the layers they create? Are they publishing the parcel layer, the building footprint layer on Arc
I
as
didn't
well?
see the building footprints yet, but probably
There's
building.
The building footprint is under St. John, or at least that's what we were looking at earlier. It's somewhere in there.
Wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Buildings, general layer.
And they have stuff in like Colorado too.
Interesting.
I'm going to be cynical and say the reason that they do it this way is because it's a little bit of a shell game. If you're dealing with counties and public, you know, agencies where people working there have no idea what's actually happening, they just know that they need to have a GIS portal, you know, and it's like there's probably a boilerplate contract.
Well, I can see that.
It's the set it and forget it kind of thing. It's like, oh, we can just pay this company to do it for us and we're set.
But if they're creating vector layers, why would they serve them through ArcGIS?
Well,
they maintain
there's a lot of extra things that come along with ArcGIS server probably. I don't know, you know, there's, hard to say, I guess.
I don't get the business model because they need to pay for that then, right?
Is it cheaper for them to maintain their own server than to have?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And use GeoServer and serve all your own stuff. You could even, the public layers like the parish outline, maybe that's from some other source. They could include that, but I don't get their business model. I don't see what they're doing.
Let's write them a letter.
Definitely the most.
Don't tell them we hacked their data though.
Yeah, don't tell.
Call them and say, hey, we're hacking your data. Can you explain why you did it this way?
Well, this is the thing though, is that I would push back against that because these are all public agencies and this should all be publicly available data. There should be no sort of presumption of proprietariness. True. I would argue.
I know, I'm just being stupid.
No, I think they are. I think that's my, this is stuff that you shouldn't have to sneak your way in the back end to download. It should be there on a portal for you to click download and access it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right about that. Well, I think this is very successful.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot out of it. So.
Glad I asked that question.
So, remind me which part of that when we were looking at the at how at how to get to it, which part did you get rid of? There was stuff you didn't need. Let's see, where it says ArcGIS REST Services, St. John Public Services. What did you do?
Yeah. So the key is that there's going to be this common portion of the URL that's like /GIS/REST,
Right.
or ArcGIS/REST/services, something
Right.
like that. So
Okay.
The original one had a proxy thing in the front of it, but it also had the second URL like tacked on, which had this much more common services.something/ArcGIS REST services. So that was kind of the clue, I think.
Okay.
But that's actually, I haven't really seen that before. I don't think that's super common. But it's definitely good catch, Andrew, on figuring that out.
Yeah. Yeah, like Andrew said, it seems like they're just trying to mask the actual endpoint.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I'm adding this to the spreadsheet, so should be helpful.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. That was fun. That was good. I think we had a lot of good material.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, and all of you, thanks for the info.
Bye.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
All right, see you later.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
See ya next week. Bring your favorite map. Talk to you later.